Then let's start to talk about a little bit about the primeurs because this is a very interesting part of the Bordeaux tradition. It's uh, it's only Bordeaux technically. Nowhere in the world are there such uh, setups like in this manner as in Bordeaux, and lots of people doesn't really understand how this works. So could you explain to our viewers who are not familiar with the Bordeaux primeurs how does it work and what's the point of it?
Course, and you're right. It's this is primarily a tradition in Bordeaux. That said, there are some estates in Burgundy and other areas as well that do primeur sales. But if you look at the tradition of primeurs, and primeurs means futures, so you're basically buying the wine before it's bottled. So while it's still in barrel, the chateaus will be selling their wine. So if you go back, it was a very good method for the chateau owners to finance and get money up front. And it's important to remember that over the years, there have been several down and up periods in the wine industry. So for some chateaus, it's been pretty important to get the cash up front and to be able to sell their wines. If you look at the system itself, it's dating back a couple of thousand years. We're almost back to Julius Caesar when we first saw the primeur system or a similar system. So it's been going on for a very long time. And one of the things that when you buy wine which is still in barrel, you're basically saying that I'm trusting these chateaus to produce a very good wine this year and that year. So the way the system works today is that in March, April, and it's been a little bit later now than it used to be, then all the journalists and the wine merchants, the negociants, the wine importers, etc., the whole industry goes to Bordeaux, and then you taste through a lot of the wines. Usually, if you're a wine importer, you'll taste from your chateaus, and you go to a couple of wine tastings and see if you can find other good chateaus. So that we're probably tasting like 20, 30 wines maybe per day. And then you come to the journalists, and and I can hear what I'm going to say and how it's going to sound. But it's actually, when you're a journalist, you're tasting about 80 to 100 wines a day. And
Wow.
it is actually, yeah, it's a lot of wines to taste. So you start early in the morning. You get out at like 6 in the morning. Yeah, your first appointment maybe 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in. And Bordeaux is a huge city. The wine region itself is really big. So if you're staying in Saint-Emilion and you're going all the way up to Pauillac, for example, you're going to spend 1.5 hours of driving or maybe even 2 hours of driving because of all the traffic jams that are in Bordeaux constantly. So it's a lot of tastings. You have regional tastings, so you have, for example, you have the tasting of the Pomerols in Pomerol. Then you go to Saint-Emilion, and you can taste Saint-Emilion wines there, and Pauillac, etc. So it's like region based, and then you have all the bigger chateaus like Latour, Pontet-Canet, all the well-known estates, and then you have to make an appointment and you have to go to their chateau and taste their wines. So it's quite hectic. You're finished about like maybe 5, 6 o'clock in the evening, and then go to dinner, and you're back where you stay at like midnight, up 6 hours later, and the day goes on. So it's a busy week. You come home, you don't want to drink wine for a week or two. At least I don't
You're
want to
filled
drink
up.
wine for. Yeah, you had your share for a week. But it's really interesting, and you get to taste the wines from barrel, so they're pretty hard to taste. A lot of tannins. It's not finished. Some of them haven't even come out of malolactic fermentation. So but it's super interesting, and you learn so much about the vintage. Like last vintage, which was really hot in Europe. I always make it a point not to know anything or as little as possible about the vintage. I don't read vintage reports. I don't read the expectations of the other wine critics, and there's at least 1 or 2 wine journalists that go like 2 weeks before all the others to be first to publish your notes and the expectations. So I don't read all that. I just want to come down there. I want to taste the wines. Don't want to have any expectations. But that said, I live in Norway. It's not that far from France. And the 2022 vintage or the summer was really hot, and the spring was warm, and the autumn was warm. So it was a warm season all from the get-go. So I was expecting coming down there and tasting wines that were high on alcohol in the 14.5 to 15.5 range, lacking a little bit of acidity, being quite plummy, jammy in the fruit. And then you come down there and you're tasting the first batch of wines, like the first 20 odd wines or something. And you're like, these wines are actually pretty good. And there is an energy to the wines that you're not expecting. The alcohol is lower than you're expecting. They're like in the 13.5 range. Yeah, it's just this region has they've made it, they've cracked the code. And then you go to the next region and it's the same all over the whole area. And I'm talking to a lot of these wine producers and I'm asking them, what's the secret? What did you guys do? Because we all know it's a hot summer. That means more sugar. More sugar equals either residual sugar or higher alcohol. It's that's the way it works. So they're telling me that, well, actually, we've learned a lot from the previous vintages and from what they're doing in Napa, because in Napa, it's pretty warm. And in Napa, what they do is that they allow the canopy or the leaves from the wine plants to sort of form a layer above all the grapes. So in reality, the grapes don't really see that much direct sunlight. It's indirect sunlight, and thereby lowering the sugar content. And also they said that they were, at least a lot of the wine producers said that during fermentation, always the pH level, it declines. So you get more acidity when you're fermenting the grapes. And usually the pH, it lowers about 0.2, 0.3. But in this vintage, it went down by almost a whole point. Wow. They can't really explain why, but so basically the acidity was from a lot of the producers, at least they said that a lot of the acidity actually came from fermentation. Wow. And so you can be down there for 10 vintages, 20, 30, 40 vintages. You're always learning something new, and it's such a learning experience. And the very good part of being in the Primeurs, at least for me, is that you'll always find some gems. Some chateaus that have made an absolutely killer wine in that particular vintage. And if I was to name one chateau in the 2022 vintage that you guys should be looking out for, it's actually Chateau d'Alem. They've made an absolute killer wine in 2022. I mean, they always make good wines, but in 2022, of course, absolute stunner.
Yeah. Probably that's one of the points of going to the Primeurs to find those gems and to find out where, for investors, what should they invest in, or for the consumers, what wines should they stack up in. So that's very interesting and very, very important point from your part, that finding these gems are the point.
Yeah, and it's also very interesting to follow estates over several years and see how they change their styles. I remember, I think this was for the Primeurs in 2017, so it was the 2016 vintage, and I'm at Co Estornel, which is a really good wine estate. And we're there with the technical director, tasting the wines, and I'm like, sorry, but I have to ask you a question, because for me, this is not what I was expecting from Co Estornel. Because for me, Co Estornel has always been on the more heavy side of the Bordeaux styles, and I'm not saying that's either good or bad, but it's just how you
style,
different style wines. But in the 2016, if I remember the vintage correctly, it was such an elegant wine. And I'm like, this is totally different from what I was expecting. He's like, that's a very good point. We've changed style. Glad you noticed. Did you like it? And I'm like, I love it. It's brilliant. So you can see all the involvement and how what winemakers, what consultants they're using, how it will affect the wines, and how they what the production looks like. And it's super interesting.
Thanks for watching this video. You can watch the full podcast episode by clicking here, or watch another interesting video by clicking here. Let's continue the discussion in the comment section, and see you in the next one.